Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's meeting of the ESPO Management Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, and it will also be available for viewing after the meeting. I have been informed that we are not quorate as a meeting within the room today, as we have less than 4 of the member authorities present. I propose, therefore, that we hold the meeting virtually as we have members signing in. As was agreed by the Management Committee in 2018, in order to overcome the legal issues of needing to meet in person for any issues that require a formal decision, following this meeting, an email will be sent to all members setting out any decisions taken at the virtual meeting, asking if any member wished to object to the decision taken, and to do so within a week. If an objection is received, then a special meeting would be called unless it would be possible to defer consideration to the next formal meeting. If no objection is received within the timescale, the decision would be implemented by the consortium secretary using delegated powers. The protocol was agreed by all constituent bodies and is reflected in the Constitution. Thank you for your patience while I read that out. So we have received apologies from Councillor Higgs at Lincoln, Councillor Jameson Norfolk, Councillor Baxter Payne Warwick. The following members are joining us via Microsoft Teams, so welcome to you. I think we've tested that we can hear you all, so welcome to Councillor James Norfolk, Councillor Ferguson Cambridge and Councillor Shayla Cambridge as well. We are expecting a couple of other members who will probably arrive late, so I'll welcome them when they do arrive. Are there any other apologies, please? No, thank you, Anna. So we'll go on to agenda item 1, which is minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of June 2023. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of June 2023 be approved. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Poland. Agenda item 2, to advise any items that the chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda, and there are no urgent items. Declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please, members? No? We have some feedback, yes. So we have no declarations of interest. No, thank you. Agenda item 4, items referred from the Finance and Audit Subcommittee. There are no items referred by the subcommittee. The issues considered by the subcommittee are covered in item 11, which appears elsewhere on the agenda. Can we do something?
Mrs. Wright, I just wonder if we can just check if everyone in the room has not logged into this meeting as a Teams meeting, because that's sometimes causes this.
No, it's only this one, isn't it? Yeah. By the sound of it. I may have to swap. We can do a swap. Or it's because it's irritating, isn't it? So I will be quiet in a moment anyway. So item 5, Consortium Secretary and Consortium Treasurer. Our first report on pages 9 to 12 is by Lauren Haslam, the Director of Law and Governance at the County Council, and relates to the roles of Consortium Secretary and Consortium Treasurer. So over to you, Lauren.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. As the Chair's outlined, my name's Lauren Haslam. I'm the Director of Law and Governance at the County Council. As a joint committee, the governance of which is set out in the consortium agreement, there are certain formalities in relation to the officer appointments to support the consortium and the County Council as the servicing authority. This brief report seeks the Management Committee's approval to change the consortium secretary from Mr. Sinnott, the Chief Executive of the County Council, to myself, and to reflect the resignation of Mr. Tambini, who's the former Director of Corporate Resources here at the County Council, to replace him with his successor, Mr. Declan Keegan, as Treasurer. The recommendations, Chair, are at paragraph 8 of the report.
Thank you, Lauren. Does anybody have any comments or questions, please? No? I will swap after this item, yes. I don't think I can get through the meeting otherwise. So I move that we formally confirm the appointment of Lauren Haslam, Leicestershire County Council's Director of Law and Governance as Consortium Secretary, and to delegate the relevant functions set out in Appendix 3 of the Constitution to her. And we move B, formally confirm the appointment of Declan Keegan, Leicestershire's County Council's Director of Corporate Resources, as Consortium Treasurer, and to delegate the relevant functions set out in Appendix 3 of the Constitution to him. Could I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Butlin. Thank you. Good morning, ladies. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on such an awful day. I'm sure travel has some impact. So Councillor Sue Rawlins and Councillor Allen have just joined the meeting. And Councillor Cole, sorry Councillor Cole, I missed you. You snuck in there. Very sneaky, yes. And also, while you're settling in, welcome. Yeah, I'd like to welcome Councillor Jackie Allen, your first meeting. So thank you, Jackie, for joining us. We've only just started, so we've just done the first item on the agenda, which is agenda item 5. So I'm just going to swap because we've got awful feedback on this microphone. Thank you. That is better. You'll be relieved to know. So we're moving on to agenda item 6, which is Director's Progress Update. So for item 6, which is on pages 13 to 28, Christian Smith, Director of ESPO, will introduce his progress update since the previous meeting. Over to you, Christian. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, all. So, purpose of my report is to update management committee of the actions and progress since the last update provided in June 2023. First section here is financial performance, and just to point out financial performance for 4 months to July 2023. I'm delighted to inform the committee that after 4 months, a surplus of £5.9 million has been made, which is £1.2 million better than budget and £2.4 million higher than last year. And following the launch of our new catalogue, we've performed very well, despite obviously the challenges of inflation and the need to reflect that in our prices. The market does remain very competitive, but ESPO has been extremely well placed to compete in this year. Our costs continue to be tightly controlled, with expenditure of £8.8 million, very slightly better than budget. And for the full year, as a reminder, our MTFS target is for £6.2 million. Once we've traded through our summer and September peak periods, I propose to report to the November committee with an enhanced profit number for the year, as we've done in the past as a range, but I think it's prudent to do it at that point and not at this point. In terms of the next level of detail through sales and margin, total sales to July 23 were £36.9 million, which is £500,000 ahead of budget and £4.6 million ahead of last year. Store sales specifically at £25.9 million were in line with budget, and gross profit margin percentage for stores at 31.7 is slightly ahead of budget. In terms of our direct sales channel, they're at 6.3 million, and that's in line with budget. Gross profit margin for directs is at 15.4%, and that is slightly ahead at 0.7% of budget. In terms of our rebate income from our procurement activity, that's at 4.7 million, which is £500,000 ahead of budget and up 20% on last year. And then worth pointing out that our other income is slightly ahead, about £100,000 ahead, which is just benefiting from higher interest rates on our cash deposits. So overall, our gross profit margin at 14.7 million is £1 million better than budget. In terms of expenditure, as I said, is slightly lower than budget, A key measurement for me is expenditure as a percentage of sales, and you can see as July the KPI was 23.9%, which is 1% better than budget. In terms of our private trading activity through ETL and EduZone, you can see total sales of just over 500,000, and that's in line with budget. Our business serving international and private sector customers has started really strongly with sales ahead of budget. However, EduZone, our business focusing on early years in the UK, has been slightly behind budget, although ahead of last year. Margin expenditure is largely in line with budget, and you can see overall a £45,000 surplus has been generated, and this is slightly ahead of budget and last year. In terms of a quick audit update, in July 2023, our auditors, the Midlands office of Fortis, merged with TC Group. We're now in the process of completing the audit for 22-23 and expect to submit this to Finance and Audit Subcommittee in October as planned. Second section report is, as ever, focusing on operational progress. And what we do here is we try and set out some metrics that you can see each quarter and report consistently against. And I also think it gives you a sense of scale, which I hope you find useful as well. It is a busy July period for the nature of our business, and you can see ESPO's distribution centre picked and dispatched over 200,000 order lines and made with our courier partners over 20,000 deliveries. Our pick rate was at 29 per hour against a target of 32, and our quality assurance was slightly out at 6% versus 3%. And that's not unusual for the busiest month of the year. I would describe it as most of the year we're great, and in our busiest month we're good because of just the sheer volume that comes through at that time. Our average order value, which is really key metric for the business, was at £347 against £311 prior, and we had fantastic stock availability at 97% in July. In terms of our customer services team, you can see they handled over 6,600 calls across 5 customer services channels with an average wait of 1.36 minutes. Call performance was slightly impacted by diverting staff to order processing during peak because we had a slight technical issue with the automated ordering system, which has now been resolved. Our FIFO customer rating was at 86%. That's slightly lower than we like it to be in the 90s, but again, for the busiest month of the year, that's fairly solid in all honesty. In terms of FM, you can see we undertook all statutory inspections, and there was just one minor health and safety incident where a warehouse operative bumped their head on the bike shelter. Moving on to IT, you can see our IT help desk continues to satisfy its internal customers with a 100% rating. And the project to integrate schools' ordering system, SIMS MFS, to ESPO system is progressing very well. And this will embed ESPO's catalogue into schools' enterprise systems, enabling them to send orders digitally direct to ESPO's system. The other big piece of IT development is the use of USecure, which is our staff awareness training, and it's been widely supported by staff and an important part of our cybersecurity programme. The next section of the report is the extension of the Grove Park site, which I know members are keenly interested in. I mentioned in the report and the pre-briefings if things had changed, I would give a verbal update at this meeting. I'm delighted to say things have moved on in the right direction. So we're now in receipt of the final cost and time plan from the main contractor, and that has the schedule starting work on site on the 16th of October and finishing in September 2024. Now that is a slight pushback. We'd hope to have it at the start of summer. Obviously it's the end of summer, but we have had a fairly robust commercial summer, making sure we nailed down the right prices and getting the right deal. And to that end, I can inform the committee we have now a cost plan at 6.2 million against a delegated budget of 6.8. So there's quite a healthy financial position. That said, we are all aware of the inflationary environment, and I don't need to tell members about these capital projects and the risk of overrun. But we start in a strong position, which I'm pleased to report. Moving on to the staffing aspect, you've got our staffing sickness for July, which comes out at about 8.5 days per person. The corporate target for Leicestershire County Council is 7.5 days, which is an ambitious target, and ESPO fare fairly well in that. Although we're slightly over target, if you compared that to other directorates, that would be seen as a fairly robust performance. You've also got the main causes of sickness listed in the report, which I won't read out to you. Keeping with the people aspect, the 23-24 people plan for ESPO has been recently agreed, and it sits under 5 pillars, which are listed in the report. I'm happy to take questions on that, but again, I won't read them out to you at this stage. Finally, the ESPO leadership team held its quarterly review of health and safety and wellbeing and reviewed its major risk records, and the top risks are attached as Appendix 2. So members of Management Committee are asked to note the contents of the report. Thank you.
I'm having awful problems with microphones this morning. Before we carry on, just to announce that we now have 4 member authorities in the room, and we are now quorate, so we will be running the meeting as a normal person meeting. So just to clarify that. So thank you, Christian, for that very comprehensive presentation. Does anybody have any questions or comments? And I will try and pick up on line members. It's very difficult. If you could indicate, Anna will keep an eye on that for me. So any questions, please? Councillor Coles.
Chair, thank you very much, and Christian, thank you very much for the report. I think the one area I look at when I start looking at the report is always the risk register and where the reds lie, and so very pleased to hear that the EU secure training has gone down well. But do you think that the level of risk you're seeing there is going to reduce substantially fairly quickly? Or are you thinking it's going to take a little while to cope with that particular issue?
Thanks for the question. I think the honest answer is we are so much more aware now. So part of what we've been doing is sending out from the IT team little tests to people to see if they click into things. And in all honesty, some still do. But what we now have is a cohort to really focus on. So we go back round, make them do extra training and then retest them. So I think it will be a slow burn because you only need one person to click on the wrong thing. But actually, it's a very live conversation now, and it's tested. So I think what we've moved from is having a risk, but maybe not being seen and understood, to a risk that's seen, understood, being managed, and is going down over time. But I think will take time.
Thanks very much. I've got a second question, if I may, which was good to see you're ahead of time on the EduZone on the early years, and I completely understand the complex difficulties you have there. Is this an area that you should concentrate more resource to, or are we just going to have to sit and wait and see that the trading circumstances change before you can really take a push on that area?
Yeah, and thanks for that question. And do you know what? It's always a big dilemma about how we resource things. I'm sure you can all understand, because you take on resources and you're guaranteed to have the costs in pursuit of the return, which you may or may not get. So I always start these positions knowing I definitely have the costs and I may not have the return. So I do recognise we spread ourselves relatively thinly. What we tend to do is have a number of sales channels and see which ones become the heroes. So you can see our progress in Scotland has been really, really pleasing, and our sales internationally. I think with the strategic environment of nurseries, it would take a lot of resource, and I'm not sure it necessarily gives the return. It's not an issue of giving up on something, but I don't think it's our priority to kind of prime that anymore at this stage, because we're going to pick back the right horses that are going to bring more income to us. But it's a fair question, and we'll keep that under review, because obviously things change. But at the moment, I think we've probably got enough resources on it, and I'm not sure we get a step change for putting in more.
Any further? Councillor Rawlins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Do we just
It's going to whistle, isn't it? Is your laptop on volume? Can you turn your laptop? Are you logged in at all to the meeting? This one's okay. Do you want to come sit?
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we're having awful problems with technology this morning. So if you just bear with us while we shuffle around, we'll be back with you in a few moments. Thank you.
Okay, question. Looking at the inflation figures that came out this morning, the consumer price index has actually levelled off a little bit, but there was a comment that the industrial prices rises, apart from that, were actually in negative territory. Is that positive for ESPO? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. If I just give a little bit in general about inflation as well, if that's okay. So I think what we're seeing now is a kind of, a society that didn't really talk about inflation now talks about it in great detail. And probably most members are aware of the difference between core and non-core when you kind of measure inflation. So when we get things reported, you can have, one going down and one going up. So it can be slightly contradictory. I'm conscious that the Bank of England are predicting inflation to be down at 5% at the end of the year. But, I'm also conscious that happens to coincidentally be the exact target set by number 10. So therefore, it's a bit too precise and a bit too coincidental. I think in ESPO, we're planning for inflation beyond that. And so we still see, some signs, which I'll talk to you later about prices going down in some areas, but underlying inflation probably continuing beyond December. In terms of whether it's good or bad for us, that's a really interesting question, because one of the strengths of ESPO is it has different parts of its P&L, and undoubtedly in some parts of our P&L, inflation actually provides more income for us. So, in that narrow way of looking at it, it's actually quite good for us. In other parts of what we do, it really is disruptive for us. And just bringing that to life, if you think of things like excise books where we sell, to thousands of schools and they all buy them. If you've got a warehouse at a certain price point because of before inflation, then you're competitive. But equally, if prices go down and you're stuck with them at the old price point, you're non-competitive, and it's kind of a key value item. So inflation is something that we're constantly talking about and trying to measure against in terms of the stock we hold. I think in general, any sort of downward trend in inflation over the long term is going to be good for us overall. But I say it is quite nuanced for us because we have had some benefits from inflation.
Thank you. Just before we continue, just to try and eliminate this feedback we're having, could I ask everybody to ensure that their laptops have got the mics on mute, and we'll just try and hope that helps us. Thank you. Any further questions for Christian? Anybody online indicating? No? Okay. Just probably a point from me. I was interested to read about the people plan. That looks really interesting, and always, we value our staff, and I know it's been difficult with recruitment and everything. It would be really interesting to have a bit of a follow-up on that at another meeting to see how that's progressing and how successful it is. So thank you for that, Christian. If nobody else has any further questions, I move that the update provided by the Director be noted. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Rawlins. Agenda item 7, date of next meeting. So before we move into private session, I would like to confirm that the next meeting of the committee is scheduled to take place on Wednesday, the 15th of November 2023 at 10:30 a.m. As I've said previously, there are no other urgent items. So therefore, I move that in accordance with the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information. We will just wait until that is actioned. Thank you very much. Sorry, I need to seek a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Coles. Okay.